Welcome to the adventures of the monad. Having looked at the two lowest subplanes of the mental world in the last presentation, let us continue and finish off our look at the remaining two subplanes. The main features of the next levels of the heavenly realm, 47.4 and 5, can be described as active devotion manifested through work. These planes are particularly suited for the realization of large projects and ideas that were not fulfilled on earth, for the establishment of religiously inspired organizations, typically aimed at philanthropic endeavors, as an example. However, it must be remembered that as we ascend to higher levels, greater complexity and variety are introduced. Therefore, many variations and exceptions occur which cannot be easily grouped under the general classification of the entire plane. Let us look at a few examples. A typical above-average case involved a profoundly religious man who devised a grand scheme to improve the condition of those in a lower stratum of society. The plan involved combining businesses to achieve cost savings, offering good wages, providing workers with cottages and gardens, and sharing profits. He believed that by demonstrating the practical application of Christian principles, he would win over many people to his faith, as they would be thankful for the tangible benefits they had received. A similar case involved an Indian prince who had attempted to model his life and governing methods on the example of the divine hero King Rama, while on earth. Many of his schemes had failed during his earthly life, but in his afterlife, everything went well. Rama personally advised and directed the work, receiving perpetual adoration from all his devoted subjects. Remember, the mental world is a work of fiction, just as the emotional world is a work of fantasy. A peculiar example of personal religious experience involved a nun who was a member of a religious order focused on serving others. In her vision of heaven, she was always busy feeding the hungry, healing the sick, and providing assistance to the poor. An interesting aspect of her experience was that whenever she helped someone, the person would transform into the appearance of Christ, whom she would then worship with deep devotion. Another example that illustrates this is that of two deeply spiritual sisters, one of whom was disabled while the other had devoted her life to caring for her. While on earth, they frequently discussed and made plans for the religious and philanthropic work they would like to pursue if they were given the opportunity. In the heavenly realm, each is the central figure of the other's paradise, with the disabled sister now well and strong. Each believed that the other is working alongside her to fulfill the unfulfilled aspirations from their earthly life. In these instances, the only difference brought about by death is the absence of sickness and suffering, making the work that was previously impossible now achievable. On this plane, you can find the highest caliber of dedicated missionaries who are wholeheartedly committed to converting countless individuals to their specific faith. Notice that they have not turned into great spiritual beings. They are just working up the idea they developed in their earthly lives, noting nothing more, nothing less. There also occurs on this plane some cases of art devotees who follow it for their own sake, or regard it as an offering to their deity without thinking of its effect on their fellows. Artists who pursue art for the sake of fame and self-gratification would not find their way to this plane at all. Conversely, those who consider their artistic talent as a great power entrusted to them for the spiritual elevation of others would reach an even higher heavenly plane than the one we are now considering. Let's talk about a very religious musician who saw all his work as a gift to Christ without realizing the powerful impact of his composition on the spiritual plane. Although he may not have been aware of it, his enthusiasm brought joy and assistance to many people, and the results would have increased his devotion and musical ability in his next life. However, without a broader aspiration to help humanity, this type of afterlife experience may repeat itself indefinitely. It's important to note that the three lower mental planes, the seventh, sixth, and fifth subplanes, are focused on devotion to individuals, such as one's family and friends or a personal deity. The wider devotion to humanity for its own sake is expressed on the next subplane, as we shall see. The fourth heaven. Located on the fourth subplane is situated the highest level of the lower rupa or form levels. Arupa means formless and would apply to the causal envelope. The activities of the fourth heaven are so diverse that it is challenging to categorize them under a single characteristic. They can be best arranged into four main divisions. 1. Unselfish pursuit for spiritual knowledge. 2. High philosophic or scientific thought. 3. Literary or artistic ability exercised unselfishly. 4. Service for the sake of service. A more easily understandable explanation can be achieved by providing a few examples of each category. 1. Unselfish pursuit of spiritual knowledge. The majority of the people in this group come from religions that value the importance of attaining spiritual knowledge. Here you can find Buddhists who view the Buddha as a teacher rather than a figure to be worshipped, and who aspire to sit at his feet and learn. Their desires are fulfilled because the image of Buddha they have formed in their minds is not just an empty form. It radiates the remarkable wisdom, power, and love of the greatest teacher on earth. As a result, they are gaining new knowledge and broader perspectives, which will have a significant impact on their next life. They may not remember specific details in their next life, but when presented with such information, they will understand it readily and intuitively recognize its truth. Moreover, the teachings will instill in their consciousness a strong inclination to adopt broader and more philosophical views on related subjects. The impact of living a heavenly life is to significantly accelerate the development of the self. Therefore, there is a tremendous advantage for those who follow the teachings of influential and powerful mentors. A person who follows the teachings of a great and spiritual writer and idealizes that writer experiences a similar effect to a lesser degree. The writer's influence will become a part of the student's life after death and, because of the student's own developed power, will bring life to the mental image of the writer and further illuminate the writer's teachings. Many Hindus, as well as a few advanced Sufis and Parsis, and some early Gnostics, believe that their heaven existed on this level. However, except for a few Sufis and Gnostics, it seems that neither Islam nor Christianity elevates its followers to this level. Nevertheless, some individuals who identify with these religions may reach this subplane due to the presence of certain qualities in their character that are not solely dependent on the teachings specific to their own religion. There are also serious students of occultism who are not yet advanced enough to renounce their Divachan. An interesting case was observed in which a person had developed an unworthy and unjustified distrust of the motives of her old friend and teacher, which had blocked to a significant extent the higher influence and teaching that she could have otherwise enjoyed in her heaven life. The influence and teaching were not withheld from her in any way, but her own mental attitude had made her somewhat unreceptive to them, although she was completely unaware of this. There was an abundance of love, strength, and knowledge available to her, but her own ingratitude had sadly limited her ability to accept it. 2. High philosophic or scientific thought. This category does not encompass philosophers who engage in verbal arguments and hair-splitting, as that form of discussion is rooted in selfishness and conceit. Therefore, it can never contribute to a genuine understanding of the realities of the universe or produce outcomes that can manifest on the mental plane. We find here not those who seek insight and knowledge for selfish reasons, but rather noble and unselfish thinkers who seek to enlighten and help others. A typical example is that of a later follower of the Neoplatonic system, who is occupied with unraveling the mysteries of that school of thought and trying to understand its impact on human life and development. An astronomer whose studies have led him to pantheism was still pursuing his studies with reverence. He was gaining knowledge from those orders of devas through whom the majestic cyclic movement of the stellar influences seemed to express itself in ever-changing flashes of living light. He was lost in contemplation of a vast panorama of whirling nebulae, gradually forming systems and worlds, and striving to form some idea of the shape of the universe. His thoughts surrounded him, shaped as stars, and he listened with joy to the stately rhythm of the music that pealed out of this mighty chorale from the moving orbs. Like this astronomer, scientists come back to Earth as great explorers with a deep understanding of the mysterious ways of nature. 3. Literary or artistic effort exercised unselfishly. On this level, we find our greatest musicians, Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, Wagner, and others are still filling the heavenly world with harmonies far more glorious than they were able to produce on earth. Divine music streams into them from higher realms, where it is refined and personalized before being sent out as a tide of melody, adding to the joy of everyone around. Both those who are fully conscious on this plane and the disembodied entities at this level, each absorbed in their own thoughts, are profoundly affected by the uplifting influence of this music. Painters and sculptors are constantly creating beautiful artificial forms through their thoughts, which they share with others for enjoyment and inspiration. These beautiful ideas can also inspire artists who are still alive, guiding their creativity. On this level, there was an interesting figure of a chorister who died young. He had little besides the great gift of song, but he used it worthily, aiming to be the voice of the people to heaven, and of heaven to the people. He was always eager to learn more about music and render it more worthwhile for the church's sake. His wish bore fruit, and he was visited by the figure of Saint Cecilia, which he had imagined from a stained glass window. This vision was animated by one of the archangels of the celestial hierarchy of song, and through it he was taught music beyond anything known on earth. Another example is a man who on earth refused to use his literary power to earn a living for himself and instead wrote a book that no one read. He lived a life of solitude and eventually died of sorrow and starvation. In his heaven life, he too was in solitude, but he saw the utopia he had dreamed of and the vast impersonal multitudes he had longed to serve. The joy of their joy filled him, making his solitude a heaven. 4. Service for the sake of service. On this level, many individuals have provided service out of a genuine desire to help others rather than to seek favor from any specific deity. They are actively involved in developing grand plans for global betterment, while honing their abilities to implement these plans in the future on the physical plane of existence. What is presented here is just a snapshot representing a much broader spectrum of worlds for us to inhabit. Remember the saying in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 2. "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you." Thank you.